We both do it, right?
I'm watching it there, so.
Okay, so I have a record, but okay. Hi, everybody. At least hi, Alan, and welcome to another in our stop and go slow burn series, Menstuff. How should man live? Question mark. The question mark being the real thing, and tonight this is a third episode, I think, Alan, in our series.
Yeah, that's it. It's hard to imagine 3 weeks in a row.
Starting from scratch. We're too old for this technology. Anyway, I introduce myself, Liam O'Gogan. Hi, I'm blabbing here from the northwest of Ireland up in West Donegal. And Alan, my co-host, you'd like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm sitting here in Fairhouse in Dublin, south, a good deal away from Donegal, but yeah.
Okay. Minuscule in world terms for blab. Anyway, tonight's conversation is going to be about paternity leave. And hopefully people might join us on the journey today. We're going to do it for 45 minutes. We'll talk about just paternity leave. Again, most importantly, from a male perspective. That's really what we want to look at, is the idea of paternity leave. Again, given that blab is a worldwide process, most of the activities happen at this point in its development in America. If people join us, it would be great if people were to give us some of their own perspectives and what's the reality in different cultures.
Just to let people know that this is sort of preempted by Mark Zuckerberg's recent, I suppose, interventions in all of this. He's recently become a dad himself, and some of the earlier stuff that we'd seen maybe a couple of weeks back, Liam, was that Facebook were to give fathers up to 4 months paid paternity leave. And this is obviously driven by his own current situation. It's something that you and I well know over the years. It's been badly needed, and somebody in the industry needed to actually lead this. There was a lot of I suppose, I won't say negativity towards fathers, but just people just assumed that fathers were around, that they'd go to work and that they'd do their job and come home and look after their kids when they got home, But this whole angle that Mark Zuckerberg is taking is it's a step above all of that,
Yeah, well, when we started Blab 3 weeks ago, Alan, we had intended to get into this today because around, I just see in November the 28th, you sent me a link to a site there. Maybe you can drop that into the comment section there, Alan. That site, you could drop it in. But the headline of that article was Facebook to give fathers up to 4 months paternity leave. And suddenly, because it's Mark Zuckerberg, obviously, it's an item of international conversation. And also, Ireland is coming up for a general election, and over the last year, suddenly there have been noises that haven't been heard for, well, certainly at this level of audibility over the last number of years, about the idea of introducing paternity leave for men within the Irish conversation. I see we're joined there by William, if you're there. How you doing, William? I'm not sure where you're from, but again, we're from Ireland. I suppose all we can at the moment talk about is what the particular context is in Ireland. But I've been speaking to a couple of guys over the last few weeks. We said we'd get around to this and just talk about paternity leave. And it's interesting, like Zuckerberg suddenly goes from 0 to 4 months a year, I mean, imagine if you were a Facebook employee in Ireland. From what I understood from the article, it's talking about all of the Facebook employees being granted parental leave. So it's a broader perspective. It's a broad paintbrush. In fact, it's for same-sex partners who are not primary caregivers for babies get the same paid leave as dad. So it's really going from 0 to warp speed in no time at all. And also the other element of, I said here on that article, Facebook also gives a €4,000 or $4,000 bonus for parents to help meet the needs of new babies. So if you imagine, typically in our society, support for paternity leave is funded out of exchequer payments, so it's a government-funded process. And I never knew that anybody get as much as $4,000 or €4,000. It's extra support when you get babies. I'm sure Irish citizens have saying, why can't we have a bit of this? So I suppose it pushed it right out there, Alan. So the question is, what is paternity leave? What is our experience as men of paternity leave? What has it been in the past? What's the history of paternity leave? Who pays for it? What are the implications for fatherhood in itself? And the other thing is, what about, who pays for this? And people I spoke to during the week, a guy I was talking to on another blab, an English guy, who's a politician, interesting chap. He was just saying, what about people who are self-employed? I mean, obviously, who's going to pay for their paternity leave? And does this only apply to public service employees?
Yeah, but this is true what you're just after saying there. But also, there's also the element of, I mean, way back in the early 2000s, they were talking about balancing work and family life. There's a Department of Social, Community and Family Affairs document that refers to all of this stuff. Also, the unions were involved, reconciling work and family life, family leaves seminar, and these are all that document is 2014. So I just think it's a little bit ironic that they never actually actively engaged with fathers around this. When they talk about balancing work and family life, they're always talking about mothers. They're not talking about fathers at all.
Yeah, just a comment there by William. I've taken time twice off during the wife's maternity leave, and each time I chose to go back early. Couldn't stand it. It's the great the job to go back to. No, look, my concern, there are two concerns I have. Say, in Ireland at the moment, we're coming up to a general election. So this is just the problem is, it's seductively close to the idea of trying to get people to vote for them. I mean, they had these debates for a long time, did nothing about it. And the second element of it is, I mean, what is the commercial reality and, what are the economic implications of what Mark Zuckerberg is doing? And separately, when William's saying, and again, that's another interesting, the whole idea of working from home and the mixing of your parental role and your earning role. And, obviously that's not available for everybody, but compared to, say, 30 or 40 years ago, people just went to work in a factory and clocked in and clocked out, it's different. I mean, our history in this, Alan, goes back to, the concept of maternity leave has existed certainly for, let's say, a couple of decades, if we call it that. Yeah. And it has started over the years to increase in terms of the period of time. And over the last 20 years, I know I would have attended a number of European conferences around families. And, there was quite an extensive increase from a fixed period that you were granted to a secondary of optional leave, which mothers can separately take on top of that. And in some European countries, they have a period of maternity leave for a mother. And then they have this aspect of parental leave, which is another period which can be chosen in a mix and match arrangement by by either the father or the mother. But just at the moment in Ireland, as I understand it, now you can see from the picture, both Alan and myself, that I don't think we're in the. Sorry, I'd speak for myself. I don't think I'm in the baby making generation in relation to this.
Thanks for that, Liam.
What are these guys talking about? But I don't think things have changed. It's interesting. What do I know about paternity leave in terms of its availability? I don't know anything, because as a father of two kids, when they were young, etc., the thought of me asking for paternity leave was a joke. I mean, it was treated as a joke. In fact, it was treated as quite of an upstart, offensive, strident, angry man who would ask for such a support and resource. And yet, as you said, all the language was going around that time about managing career and family life, etc. And they were all written in theoretical documents that had nothing to do. And in fact, Sam, a friend of ours, told me that he had once gone to a work and family life balance day with his daughter, which was attended by Mary Harney, who was then a minister for something or other. But he was wondered that there was no facility at that process, no childcare facility. There was nothing to support him as a father. It was all a theoretical joke. But I mean, just an idea I had about Zuckerberg, I want to throw it out there. it sounds fantastic. Like, I mean, it sounds like Mark Zuckerberg has suddenly reached the age of maturity. He's going to have a kid of his own. From what I saw in one of the articles, it suggested he was going to take 3 months leave, and that he's offering 4 months leave to his employees. And you'd think in an organization, or in an organization which moves at the pace that Facebook does, if you drop off the developmental horse for 3 months, will you even understand the technology when you get back? That's a concern. And one of the things I think is, if you look at it from a strictly sense-making point of view, Zuckerberg generally employs people who are computer nerds, they're interested in computers. They're online all the time. They play with all these tools and toys. And even if they get 3 months off, they're probably going to have devices and all these online devices at home. And like, it's a great way, I'm a bit cynical saying it's a great way of earning staff loyalty. But the guys will be at home with their kids and online and playing, and they'll stay in touch. So I wonder how much it is as a cynical stroke by Zuckerberg. Like, if he was running a coal mine or something like that, there would he have as easy as said that. So that's, and how does this, like, I can see it working for Facebook, because Facebook workers generally will be seeking to be online all the time. And they don't work 9 to 5 hours. They probably work all sorts of other hours directed by the energy and the job, etc. How would that work for other people?
I'm just looking at William says definitely he will be online. So I think if I'm correct, William is based in the US. But just to go back to something you were saying there, when I lived in Germany, my daughter's 25 years of age now, but when I lived in Germany and she was born in 1990, that was paternity leave was an option for both of us for 18 months. That's a year and a half paid paternity leave. But we couldn't both take it, but the German government, yeah.
Right.
But either my wife or myself could have had that option, yeah.
Was it either or could you mix them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't remember whether we could mix them, but but certainly it was available to both of us. I just remember that, yeah. So it must have been. Well, I can't say whether we could have shared it. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
Well, you're there, William. It would be interesting if you are in the States and you had said you'd taken time off, but was there a supportive financial facility for that? I don't know how it works in States. Is it paid by the federal government or whatever? You might just note something in the text area there. I mean, one of the things in Ireland, as I understand it, again, we don't have paternity leave. So, because we haven't had it, there can be no financial implications for guys in relation to it. But I think that for women who've got maternity leave, I think that, like, for example, let's say you're a doctor and you're earning lots of money and the other person is an office cleaner. They're not earning so much money. What amount of money do they get from the government on their maternity leave? I can't imagine everybody gets a doctor's wages. I presume there's a median social welfare setting, which is probably not an enormous amount of money. And so, like, let's say you get a fixed sum which is welfare related. I mean, if somebody has a high expense environment, let's say you're a person who earns a lot of money, and you then go on even let's hold it with maternity leave at the moment. Go on maternity leave for 3 months, but you've got a lot less money. It's not even apart from your company implication, you're going to lose a lot of money doing this. I just see, William, you mentioned there the company paid, like how much, and you said something about base pay. I wonder, is that a typo? Was it that you got a basic pay that applied to everybody? Or let's say somebody who is high up in the company earned a lot of money, would they get the same amount of paternity pay as someone who's earning a lot less? I'm not sure. But those sort of decisions, I know again, we can only talk in Ireland about maternity leave, but in certain couples I've spoken to, this would have seriously affected the woman's willingness or facility to take time off, depending on what their overheads, etc. were. But when it has been mooted over the last number of years in Ireland, all the opposition or the scoffing of it, actually, look, guys wouldn't be interested in it. So that's interesting. Firstly, do you think, go back to, when your daughter was born, Alan.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back on all those things, did you take that time off, for example?
No, and that's the interesting thing. And actually, now that I think about it, I think we could share it, because I think she was going to take 6 months and then I was going to take 6 months. That's the way we were going to work it. And I was very nervous. I was just after coming out of training and I hadn't got a job. and I had to make a decision whether I wanted to go back to work and start my career again, or whether I was going to stay at home. And I actually I took the career option. Yeah, so it is an interesting. It was a dilemma for me.
You see, again, I'm listening. Just William, when you're talking now, you said your base pay on your current salary earnings, and I mean, you're going to join us here, William. Yeah. How are you? Good. So you join us. I'm in there. And...
How you doing, William?
Hi, William.
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing? Just start my morning.
All right. So what time are you at over there?
It's actually a little bit after 2, but I was up late online, and plus I went to see that Star Wars movie. So.
That's right. We all need a few Yodas in our life, so we do. You know.
May the force be with you.
I mean,
yeah, I took my hat off, so you guys seem pretty serious.
We took our hats off too, and look at goes.
Okay.
No, but it's interesting. Like, firstly, I mean, I think that, like, at the end of the day, your bills got to get paid, and you look at your primary function as a parent, man or a woman, and particularly in a world where, you know, we come from the tradition that men have been the breadwinners. The reality of it, the decision to take or not take paternity leave, ultimately is, it has to be, it has to take cognizance of the finances, right? Now, I think you're saying, William, that you get something based on your current earnings or something. Is that right?
Yes, I did it twice. I have an 18-year-old. He's in college now, and I actually, you know, me and his mom got divorced, and now I have an 8-year-old. So I did it when the 18-year-old was born, and I'd say I could have taken 6 weeks off, but by the third 3.5 weeks in, I was just bat crazy, and I had to go back to work. And the dynamics back then were a little bit different than what they are now.
Right.
And also, you know, my occupation, I was a cop for about 18 years. And in that job, whatever situation occurred, there were procedures that you had to go through or ways to handle it and certain paperwork that you had to fill out. So there was a sense of control there also. When at home, you don't necessarily have that. And it's basically felt like I was walking on eggshells to try to make sure that everything went okay at home, you know, because the wife ran the house. She ran the kitchen, the cleaning, the laundry, the everything. And, you know, just, I began to feel like I was this side piece or this third wheel, you know? So by the time 3.5 weeks came, I wanted to go back. Now,
William,
go ahead.
Was she at home with you when you were at home? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yes. She delivered, and I took the time off as well as her to help her, you know, because it's a little painful, cesarean sections and stuff like that, and I just wanted to be there, so I thought. But now, you know, with the 8-year-old, I did it again, and once again, I didn't want to. After 3 weeks went by, I wanted to get back to work, but I think things have changed based on, I guess, for example, it allows you to do a lot of things from home, you know, and still earn. And it's expected of us, I think, to earn, but I think a lot of men are maybe adopting a different type of identity. You know what I mean? Not so tied to actually going to work, having a job, and necessarily the traditional roles that have been prescribed in previous generations.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. That in other words, I think what you're saying is that if the roles that were normal, say 40 years ago, the nature. Well, let me just say to you, 40 years ago, the typical job would have meant that you go to a factory where you literally clock in and you clock out, with no mobile phones, and for a person who went to work, if something happened to your child during the day at school, there would have been almost no way of communicating with you. So you locked yourself into, effectively, if you call it, the coal mine. And it doesn't matter whether it's a nice factory, it's a place with a door on it, you stay in for hours. And within that culture, and where there was no paternity leave, for example, there's a complete mismatch, and you can't have that balance. As you say, William, the modern environment, just the nature of work itself, is much more agile, flexible, not necessarily any easier, because the idea of just doing a 9-to-5 job now really has disappeared. You got to be online all the time, but it does open up new landscape possibilities, I suppose. Is that what you're saying, William? Is it?
Yes, it does. And, like what I'm doing now, I don't have to face the specter of the guys or the fellas. Some of my coworkers, basically, they know that I had that privilege or right or whatever you want to call it to take the time off. But at the same time, there's talk amongst each other, behind my back about, why does he need all that time off? And even that happens during death. My mom passed about a year and a half ago, and I used that same Family Leave Medical Act to take time off. But there still was talk, because maybe it's the profession that I was in, or maybe it's the traditional idea or I guess perception of a male's role in a workplace. Maybe we're not supposed to be able to take that time off to deal with things, that might be it also. I'm not sure.
William, would women use that act more than men?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think is, to be fair, I would see that in a lot of places which are competitive work where women are involved, I think you'll find that reaction to women taking time off, a lot of negative reactions. So, for example, my work was as a lecturer, and there were certainly comments made by women about other women who planned their parenting in such a way that the child was delivered in the first semester, they took maternity leave in the second semester or whatever, and then they were on a long summer break. So I don't think it's unique to men and women. I just think it's about the competitiveness in work, and that's a natural thing. And maybe the lack of societal value generally in terms of what the importance of early engagement with children is. I think that's a more generic thing. But the other thing I'm wondering about is, when you said you took it at an earlier period, I just wonder, when there's just a few guys doing it, for example, the sense of awkwardness or discomfort that you felt about almost being like a spare tool at home, William, I'm wondering how much less that would be if it were much more normal for fathers to take a lot more paternity leave. If we were in a natural environment where fathers and mothers did, took paternity leave interchangeably,
shared it.
Yeah, would you have felt so uncomfortable, or if that's the right word?
I think back then, if it was more acceptable, it would have been easier, But, since then, after my mom passed, I reevaluated some things about life, and I've detached my, I guess, self-worth or the majority of my identity to the traditional, I guess, idea of a man working or what a man should do, So, yeah, back then, if it would have been more acceptable, I think it would have been a lot easier. But if I had the mindset that I have now back then, it wouldn't have mattered. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, once again, I'm able to detach myself from that traditional, I guess, mindset of what men were expected to do previously, And I see what I missed with my 18-year-old now that he's in college, because I was all about working. And, after the 8 hours is up, I go to work security off duty somewhere, But now it's like I'm getting to do so much, excuse me, with my kids, school functions and things like that, and just being a dad and being there, unlike I was able to previously. And no, I don't replace the mom whatsoever. We each bring things to the table, but I'm here. I'm here to discipline. I'm here to lift them up. I'm here to do a few things around the house, but I'm sure that I batch what I do online when they're asleep or when they're at school, so that I can focus and concentrate on them. Where before I was like sleeping and tired because I just worked 18 hours or something like that.
You see, also in an earlier period, like I remember when I graduated in university, on the night of our graduation, like this is 1977. That's anyway. It didn't appear so long ago back in the 70s. But anyway, that's when it was. But I remember on that night, one of the guys we were with, we were graduate engineers, and he was saying that now that we had graduated, this is to paraphrase what he was saying, that now that we had graduated, we were now in a fit position to be able to get ourselves a woman. In other words, we were in the societal model of provider that we could come to the table with, the bacon. We could bring the bacon home. And this is what you're saying about that whole reevaluation. So like my background had come up through, you were expected to be a provider for the home, get the mortgage, do the work, etc. And then I think the breach came in the 80s and 90s when fathers then were also getting under a lot of hassle for why aren't you doing stuff around the house, etc. And then when guys did try and do something around the house, they were effectively butting in on an area which had become a natural comfort zone for females. And they were isolated even with each other. So guys were saying, well, if there was enough other guys around, like we might organize the house differently, either to each other or to women, but that doesn't mean it's any better or worse. We may parent differently, but as you said, there are different elements that you bring to the table.
Right.
William, I have a question as well. When you said earlier that when you did take the leave, you felt a bit awkward around your colleagues. Were you the only one, or were there other members of the police? I guess it was the police force, was it? Fathers who did the same thing.
Yeah, I recall there were others who did it, but there was still this ever permeating sense of, I guess machoism or whatever it is. They were looked down upon in reference to things like that. We were looked down upon in reference to if we went through a stressful situation at work or was having a stressful situation at home. If help was offered, you didn't go get that help, because once you went and got that help or talked to someone, you were looked upon as damaged goods. And if something happened later on, that will be brought up. And I don't know if that's in all professions, but I tend to think that we as men, for the most part, tell each other to man up or suck it up when we also have needs, emotional, needs, the same emotional needs that we had, when we were little precious babies. I think for some reason we become disposable as time goes by. And if we're not careful, we teach that that's acceptable. Mm-hmm. And I feel that either society is going to have to change that, and they may be changing it. However, I'm not sure, because based on what you guys have said about the Zuckerberg article, which I haven't read yet, his motivation may not necessarily be us. It could be the same-sex couples, and sometimes that has to occur, and you reap the benefits from it. Just like the election that's coming up in Ireland, it may be a reason. It may be a case of simply getting the votes, and if the majority of the voters are valuing that, and the females, especially females, because I think that's a group that politicians really go after. If that is a priority for the females, it may be why it is even being considered, So I don't know.
Yeah, hi. I just see we've been joined there by Kevin. Good to see you back again, Kevin. Just I just want to go back. It's interesting what you just said. When they even at work stuff, that stuff like paternity leave could become available for men, not because of its own internal or a fundamental value, but as a byproduct. So, for example, there was a seminal case in Irish law. Now, it could be 15 years and more ago, but it was interesting. It was about adoptive leave. So we just take away from parental leave. So this is a situation where an Irish couple had adopted a Romanian child. I tell you, it was at the end of the Ceausescu regime in Romania, where in orphans, etc. So that this couple adopted the child and brought the child to Ireland, and the adoptive father applied for paternity leave, and this case went all the way to our High Court in Ireland, and they had to parse the law. And the interesting thing, he was granted adoptive leave, which had the same financial benefits as maternity leave, on the basis under equality law an adoptive mother or adoptive father were no different. They were adoptive parents, and no discrimination could be found in the law. And the interesting thing is that the Supreme Court judge at the parsing that stated that the words in law must mean what they say in the English dictionaries, right? So there was a situation where an adoptive father who had no biological connection with the child whom he'd adopted, and a nice guy and all the rest, became more relevant and got greater precedence in terms of parental possibilities than a biological father with his own children, even in a functionally happy relationship. So there's an example that something happened which pushed a group of people forward. So, I mean, for example, within a gay relationship or marriage as we have in Ireland now, if such persons were to adopt children, they would become available for adoptive leave, while biological parents or biological fathers would be refused paternity leave. Now, look, this is insane, but that's the way it goes. I'm not sure whether Zuckerberg necessarily is reaching to that audience, but I think it's cool what Zuckerberg is doing. I think it raises the debate, therefore I think it's good, but you have to question what's behind it, you know?
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And the other thing is this the ruling of the Supreme Court recognizing gay marriage or allowing it everywhere in the States. I personally don't have an issue with it, but what I do have, I guess, perspective about, and I've talked to a few of them on here, is I don't necessarily feel that the Supreme Court cares about your right to be married. I think what just happened was they just doubled the amount of business for their buddies who are practicing divorce. And me, and me as a photographer, really, there's a whole new niche that I could market to.
That's right. Divorce photographs.
No.
Down the middle.
Same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering. I'm wondering what the ideal paternity leave, guys, would be. I mean, I'm mindful of what William said, is that if you're going to have paternity leave, it would hopefully bring major benefits to, 1, the child, 2, the father and the father-child relationship, and 3, to the mother and alleviating her personal load. And I wonder what the best model, given the nature of extreme different types of work, the work that you have, which is very flexible, William, or maybe, for example, the work of office workers who work 9 to 5, that sort of stuff. What would be, is it better to have a front-loaded long period, or is it better to work with maybe a 3-day week for a period of 6 months? So do you have any sense of what might be, the point I'm making here is, if you just suddenly move from a work environment to being in a home space which is not your day-to-day place, and certainly in your case, whether the mother of the child was there as well, then, you're a spare tool. I mean, what do you do? How do you're adjusting someone else's style. If, on the other hand, you were to take a day a week off, for example, for 5 months, and that day the mother would do something else and maybe chill out doing something else, you would then, I keep thinking the guys will assume the position, step up. You just do what, when you end up parenting on your own, you just do what comes natural. And there's no training being a parent,
No.
There's no manual, no training. And I think that's part of the dilemma as well. People are just dropped in it. If there was support, more support there, then people would be more likely to step up and do what would be necessary.
Again, I look at a double-ended agenda. If like, for example, just before I come on here, I researched the site now. It was just an article I saw, is paternity leave going to become a reality in Ireland? And it was written on a women's website, but it was saying, look, there's a lot of guys who just pretend they're interested and couldn't care really less. So it started from a negative space. But I would have thought that if the long-term agenda is to create sustainable long-term relationships between children and their fathers, children and their mothers, and that mothers and fathers both get to chill out, if that was the long-term agenda, then it's not simply a matter of introducing a period of parental leave or paternity leave. It's a creation of an environment in which, when people take up that leave, they have tools or cultures that they can work with. As you said, William, rather than being in an environment which is maybe talking behind your back, that it's seen as a winner's game.
I agree. I agree that on the reevaluation of who I am, what I want to do, and I've made it totally independent of what others think, you know. And now that I'm basically self-employed, I have customers. I don't have to really deal with that. And I don't even have to tell my customers, you know, when I'm home or what functions I go to or how I'm involved, you know, my children. But yeah, I think the evaluation and the ability to not be tied into a traditional workplace is a really good benefit to dealing with that. I wanted to address something you said. You mentioned, should someone be thrown, if I'm incorrect, correct me please, but I think you mentioned someone being thrown into a big length of maternity leave or paternity leave versus taking a few days off. I actually believe that it would have been a little bit easier to maybe take 1 or 2 days per week versus a long period. I think that would have been easier for me to be able to do that versus the whole time, because you're kind of lost. Because to be perfectly honest, you work 8 hours, you work 12 hours, you come home, you sleep for 8. You know, that's 20 hours. Then 1 hour putting your gear on, getting ready to go back to work, you know, maybe showering. You're really not here to witness the dynamics of what makes a home work. And a home is actually another corporation that has to flow smoothly, you know. And if you're not used to being part of that, there is somewhat of a disruption period, you know. So maybe breaking them in.
Yeah, I mean, for example, this very same situation consistently exists upon retirement. I mean, many men that I've worked with over the years, when I worked on the railway, for example, I worked with a fitter who had been on the railway since he was 14 years of age. He was now 65. And he used to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And suddenly, when he retired, he kept coming back to work every day. And the reason was because his darling wife, whom he had provided a fine home for, and she had developed a whole culture in that space, found him an extra addendum over and above her needs and requirements, all, and not for malicious reasons, all for understandable reasons. And as you said, there were two different corporations, two different cultures, two different work environments. One was the home, and one was and one was the paid environment. And in a sense, this dissection of men and women in the past, in, you know, women being homemakers and men being at work, suited neither of them. Neither of them understood each other's worlds. And I think what you're saying there, let's say, for example, let's say there were 20 days given for leave. And you say 6 weeks was 30 days, right? And let's say that was spread out over 15 weeks of 2 days each. It would allow the corporation, as you said, of the home to continue with relatively little modification. It would allow the man to appreciate the various dynamics and maybe change the dynamics as with their own experience, etc. And also not to lose touch with your workspace. But all this requires a buy-in. You see, it's one thing, governments can force it. And then why would an employer whose bottom line is profit, why would an employer say to you, look, okay, I'll take you for 60% at a time? And so we need to come up with a conversation which makes the employer realize that as a whole life valuation of William or me or Alan, this guy is a long-term player better when he's acting in holistic ways around his kids and everything.
Just to elaborate on what William was saying, I mean, like that, when my daughter was 5, back in 1995, I became self-employed as well. I was a taxi driver, and it gave me that flexibility to go out to work when she was asleep, when she, when she was in school or whatever. So I do see a huge value in that. And the other thing is that I think that's probably the model for the future, is that it's not about 50-50 equal sharing of the parenting. It's about modular type parenting that suits the arrangement for everyone, you know. That's the way I see it. That can work either way for both parents as well, you know.
But I suppose there's a lot of that has implications for self-image for men too, Alan. You know, a lot of guys are climbing the corporate ladder. They want to be the king. They want to be known as the big earner, and that pulls the quarterback gets the cheerleader. I mean, that's the culture, the culture we've done, and it's for William to take the decision, the life reevaluation decisions means that there are larger conversations that men need to have about what do I really need to be happy. And I in the same way, I think the question raised for women: can you have it all? Can you be top of the corporation, and can you actually spend time with your kids? And I think that's a delusion.
About a year or two ago, I think it was the CEO of Facebook. She was right below Zuckerberg, and she wrote about women's ambition and how a lot of them stop before they get to high management levels because they're expected.
They know the cost.
Yeah. Whereas us, we're expected to work 80 hours a week, never see our children, have a heart attack, die early. I'm not buying into that anymore. I went to university. I graduated a degree in 99, and back then that motto was already obsolete. I just didn't see the writing on the wall, right? And the reason I say that is my mom, I was raised by my mom. She always said, the next generation has to stand on top of the shoulders of the previous generation, go to school, get good grades, get a good job. I just so happened to luck out because I originally wanted to be a doctor. And when I talked to some doctors and found out they were away from their children, I didn't want to do the same thing to my kids that my dad did to us, right? And I got into law enforcement. But all the other jobs around here, they're gone. There is no secure job. There is no going to school and getting good grades, getting a good job. That is no longer available. So that within itself totally obliterates that male identity that we have in terms of a self-worth and our ability to earn, our ability to climb that corporate ladder. So I think that also was a catalyst for a lot of us to start finding alternative means to supporting ourselves and our families, and also an alternative way to view ourselves and our self-worth instead of having it tied to an institution or a career, or an occupation, because it just doesn't exist anymore. Unless you get a trade that you can carry anywhere around the world, those companies don't care about, like you mentioned, Liam, the holistic value of an employee. It's about the bottom dollar,
Yeah, I'm mindful we're coming up, guys, to our 45-minute section, but it's interesting what you've just said there, William, gives me an idea maybe for our next blab. And I just wondering the topic we would move into is, there's two aspects. One, men and work, ? And then the other thing is, where does the self-value for men come? But maybe we could take that second and break them into two sections. But I'd like maybe, Alan, if we could maybe look for the next time, maybe starting in the new year, and look at that, because it's inextricably tied in with this conversation, isn't it, about paternity leave? It's this whole idea of the work expectations. Yeah. Yeah,
no, I remember thinking there, I think back in one of the elections that we were involved in, it was one of the slogans that I used: men are born to live, not not born to look to work, even though work is a part of living. But definitely next time it would be a good subject matter. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, listen, we'll leave it at that, William. I don't know what you do for your Christmas or what sort of Christmas you have over there or whatever. But anyway, I just wish you the best. And thanks for joining us. It's been a really interesting conversation. Alan and I are deciding to try and do this for the long term, to try and, I think, some really very authentic stuff that's coming out there. And I'd like, it's a slow burn thing. We'd like to grow it. And I think it's important, like in this, that it's not about us having answers, but even identifying the question, which I think is useful,
Right. Well, I follow both you guys on here and on Twitter, so I'll be paying attention to you if you're going to do something, later on or at the beginning of the year. But yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to both of you. It was nice meeting both of you guys.
Appreciate everything. All right. Okay.
Take care. See you. Take care.
All right. So I'll finish the recording here, Alan.
Yeah.
What I'll do is then we'll just By the way, just to say thanks to everybody. Thanks, Alan. You've been there in the background, and a couple of other people, Kevin, etc., joined in. And we need, Alan, I suppose, to think about how we re-leverage this stuff back up on the web. So I'll pick you up in Skype when we finish this. Yep. Alan, you're about, maybe you join us on Skype if you could for a few minutes. So I might maybe get a chance to talk to you. Alan Moore, that is. Okay, so guys, thanks very much. Talk to you. I'll drop you out and I'll cook out then too, right?